Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks a lot for the nice words and the introduction. Can I just point out for the beginning, I don't know how many of you have been on the previous talk here, but there is nothing better than going to a stage to talk after a person who talks about how to do public speaking correctly. So no pressure at all. So today's talk, Risking It All, I was thinking about how to form this, and when I saw the agenda that I'm the last talk of the day, I thought that everyone will be super tired at this point, like listening to talks the whole day. So I thought, okay, let's make this simpler, let's make this energetic, let's not go into too harsh data, but tell it more like a story. So the goal today is for me to maybe inspire a little, show you what I did, what we did in the past that didn't work, but also maybe to make you laugh a little, just to spice it up and freshen it up a little bit. But for this to work, I need to start with getting to know each other or getting to know you and me, and mostly, I mean, it's a monologue, so it will be mostly about me, but I will start like, hey, I'm MJ, and you might be thinking, why the hell did you use this picture to promote yourself? We cannot even see your face, that it's you. And the reason is that I turned 30 this year, and I heard that when you are approaching your midlife crisis, you need to find a hobby which you can identify and you can build your whole identity around. So for me, it's cycling. Whenever someone asks me about bikes, we will be here until midnight talking about bikes. So obviously, I used a bike picture here. But it's not only about bikes what I do. I also work in between. And outside of cycling, I work on an app called Kiwi.com. Like, how many of you know the company? Is there someone who knows? Oh, wow, OK. Polish audience is good. So we build travel stuff, flight app. We have a search. We have a travel companion app to support you during the travel. TLDR, we sell flights. And I joined the company at the year of 2017, so it has been almost 7 years. And I've seen a lot of stages of a startup becoming a global company. And this year, we did a huge transformation into doing something completely differently. And this is what I would like to talk today about. But before I start talking about that, I need to kind of explain how we got to the point where are we. So it all started even before my time at the company, and that's 2014, 2015, when we were doing kind of like the biggest rocket growth. And the reason why the company was growing so fast is because we found this niche in the industry where we started combining airlines which don't cooperate together. So before that, this was something unheard of, like that Lufthansa and Ryanair would have a flight together, right? Everything was built on alliances. So we have a really cool algorithm which could combine all of this. And not only that, we also protected the layovers. So whenever you were scared that if I fly with Ryanair and then I have to go on Lufthansa flight, what will happen if the Ryanair is delayed? We could protect that layover, and we covered you, and you could have a peace of mind. We also were a very strong tech company, so we had a very fast search engine. Just to give you an example, if you know Skyscanner or Kayak, these meta searches, in those years, it took them 12, 15 seconds to load all the flights. You were like looking at it like, OK, we're still getting data from more providers. For us, it was 2.5 seconds to load. So the search was extremely fast. So that was another unique point why we were growing so much. And the reason for that is this is a blog post from our CTO, Josef Kepesi. And I think he needs to get some kudos for like building this kind of environment where the tech innovation was so strong that there was the best talents to build this amazing product. So you could say that we were kind of like an engineering-first product development where we had so much knowledge about the tech that we were building features because we could. We had all the knowledge. We didn't really think that much about like if it makes sense in the industry or not. We just were building it because we had the knowledge. And one of the good examples of a feature like this is something we call Nomad. So this is our website, and this is the search which we call Nomad, and basically what this does is, in the algorithmic world, it solves a problem, the traveling salesman problem. It's from a user perspective, it's a feature where you, for example, imagine you want to travel from the US to Europe, and you want to visit a couple of European cities and then fly back. So you would search like, okay, I want to go to Berlin for 3 days, then Prague 2 days, then I want to go to Warsaw for 3 days, and back to the US. And you would insert all this into the query, and then the algorithm would combine all these flights in an order to make you the cheapest possible combination of how these cities should be visited. So it was a super advanced feature. Nobody else does it. But there is a reason why nobody else does it, because it's probably used by 0.1% of the people. Most people just want to get to a specific destination on a specific date. So this is just an example how an engineering product development, engineering-focused product development works. And then in 2017, design came on board, and that was when I joined, when a lot of my colleagues joined, and we were tasked with the mission to make this more user-centric, more design-friendly, and it was fun times. I still have a ton of archived videos of what we were doing in the office. So this is, back in the day, we were, I think, five people on the team, and this is one of our daily stand-ups where we are just discussing, okay, what is the next step, what we should build, and how to scale this design maturity. And we started with something which I think is known to designers in the audience. We started with a design system, and we built this thing called Orbit, orbit.kiwi. You can go to the website, orbit.kiwi. It's still live. It's open source. You can use it. I think, and I'm very confident to say that it's one of the best travel design systems in the world. We got some awards for it. It's still used till this day by a lot of other companies. So this was our first step, what we started with Orbit. Then we continued with something which is called Continuous Research Team, where over the years we built a 12-member research team which was focused on triangulation. Now, what that means is that on all the opportunities we were researching, we always looked at them through different angles. So we had always a qualitative researcher looking at it, quantitative data scientist looking at it, and also a market analyst looking at those opportunities, and combining the insights together to build a stronger case for all these opportunities. So we've been really kind of progressing also in the research game. So as I mentioned, we also built a market research team where we were always tracking what the competitors are doing. At the same time, build a content design team, a localization team, because we started scaling to different markets. Like, we need to figure out how to culturally build a product in Korea. So we hired experts to the design team to focus on this. And all of this plus roughly 25 product designers working on the actual product. And at one point, the design process looked like you were tasked with a task from the roadmap, and then you had all these subtasks to finish it, like design handoff, clean Figma, contact research, and all this stuff. So it became really a process. At one point, I think the design process had 15 steps to finish a feature. And then our Figma needed to be cleaned up. So we had all the structures of how Figma is working. So we have the production versions, you have the handoff files for different experiments we want to run, then you have the exploration pages, design QA, where we discuss with the engineers what is done well and what is not fitting the design, and a lot of others. So this is, I think, good topic for the Q&A if you have any questions to these topics, or even better for the networking. So I will be here for today, so if you want to ask into any details, more than open to talk about it. But I will not spend too much time on this. I just illustrate that we were progressing with the maturity. And then, obviously, the product was maturing and scaling as well with this. So at one point, we scaled beyond flights and we started doing ground transportation. So we introduced trains and buses, and we combined it with the flights in the search. So it was like piling up. We then built this thing, we call it Tequila. This is our B2B product. We built a system where anyone in the world can register, and a company or an individual can build their own travel product using the APIs from Kiwi and sell flight tickets on their website or through their own product, and then get like payouts through this system, see reports. It's a full-on B2B product. And then, so we switched from B2C to do even B2B. Then we built this product. It's a CS system tool. CS system means customer support. And at one point, we had 4 designers working on this system, because as we were scaling, we had a lot of vendors and customer support agents around the world working for the company. So it became thousands of people. So these people became users for these designers, and they were designing a product internally to support all the transportation. So at one point, we even built our own HR system just to figure out the attendance and stuff, because nothing was fitting us. And I mean, you can understand that it was like piling up. So we moved from third-party solutions to in-house solutions. And then the last part of this product development was that as we scaled and we got a ton of data of usage, we started experimenting a lot and A/B testing, because we could and we had the data. And it got to a point where every single change on the product needed to be A/B tested. So here, imagine, like, can you even spot a difference between these 2 designs? Like, it's literally just the bullet point is different. And this was one feature released on the product and tested by millions of people going to this website. So this became like kind of, I would say, extreme. So we went from making big leaps to this A/B test experimentation, and then COVID hit. And you might expect, like, travel company COVID, like it's a complete storm. And I mean, it was a hit, but the company was not affected that much, because it was very profitable and very healthy from the beginning. So we had a lot of reserves to actually go through COVID without really a big impact. We were one of the few travel companies who didn't have to lay off anyone. So actually, COVID for us was not as much of a hit as people on the outside would expect. But for me personally, it was the time when I started questioning all these processes and everything we were doing. I was like, something doesn't add up. Like, this is not going the direction we should be going. And I think that brings me to the first part of the story, shifting the mindset of what was happening. And back then, this was our search, and people loved the search because it had features like anytime and time of stay and all these like advanced features, and it was super fast. So people were using the search, but what we noticed in the data was that less and less people were continuing to book. They searched it here, they saw the itinerary, and they went to the airline websites and booked all those flights separately, because they didn't trust that the third party could cover it as well as the airline could the travel. So this was one of the big problems we started noticing over the time. The other problem was that users were, the users who went to the booking flow, because we were fighting, as we were scaling, we started like fighting against the airlines, so we were undercutting their prices, so we were cheaper than the airline tickets, but obviously then you are loss-making, right? So we need to make the money somewhere. So where we started making it was the upselling of the other services, and this is a very typical model in the airline industry, that Ryanair typically sells a super cheap ticket, and then baggage, seating, and everything you need to buy separately, and that's how they make up for the loss. And for us, because we are not an airline, we cannot sell baggage and seats. That's still the domain of the airline. So we started selling all these protection services in our booking flow. But at one point, I think in this video, there was like 6 of them, which were offered. And people and users didn't understand which protection service is for what. Like, there is like travel insurance, and then protecting when their disruption happens, and then a flexible ticket, and air help, and like all these protection services, and everyone was just confused, like, which one should I buy to be protected? So I think this was another problem we were facing, that they didn't understand the upsells. And then there were another problem, typically with COVID, the refund policy, right? Like every airline, different refund rules. So people didn't understand, like, do I get a refund, not? In which case do I get credits? In which case can I get money? Like a lot of complexity. And also there was a missing of the up-to-date information because we didn't really focus on the in-airport experience that much because there was not much money in it. So usually you end up with not having the gate information, the terminal information, and so on. So these were a couple of big problems. And I was really, like, I started thinking about it, like, we are doing all this A/B test experimentation and optimizing and scaling everything, but there are fundamental problems inside of the product which are pretty big, and we are not looking at them at all. And together with this, this is a part of the design team. Over the years, I also, on a personal level, started to feel that I cannot really contribute. Like, I was an individual contributor, I was a designer, then I became a manager. Afterwards, I became a manager of managers. And then I felt like I had this realization that, well, I'm in such a, let's say, high position, but we still have these fundamental problems in the experience, and I cannot change them. Like, why the hell am I a leader of the team if we cannot change it? So I think for me, this was a really struggling part of my career where I was questioning, like, okay, maybe I should leave, someone else take the charge, because we need to figure out how to make this happen. And on the same time, on a personal level, I also didn't think that we needed so many managerial positions. Like, why do we have all these managers and we cannot change anything? Like, maybe we can make the mid-management layer smaller. So these were like things which were dragging me, like, especially last year. So then last Christmas party, on the 2023, this is our CEO and founder, Oliver. It's great that someone captured this moment on camera because now I can talk about it. This is exactly when I explained these problems I was just mentioning to him. Like, okay, we are making all these experiments. We are super busy with having a lot of meetings, offsites, planning sessions. But in the end, for a user, the impact is minimal. Like, we are not moving forward. And at the same time, we have so many people in the company, and we do so little work. And so I explained to him this, and to my surprise, he absolutely agreed that he sees it the same way. And he said that also he's been thinking about it and sees kind of like two options for the company going forward. One of the options is to keep it up because we are a good company, we are profitable, we can make this work for years. Or we can kind of risk it all, do a blank space and start all over again and risk it that maybe it will work out, it will be a great story, but also maybe it will completely turn into shit. And that's a kind of like a risk we could take. And I could sense from his voice that he's for the second option, that he would like to maybe try it out. So after this discussion, after this Christmas party, I went home for Christmas holidays to the village where I come from, to my parents. And yeah, obviously, as I already mentioned at the beginning, I was cycling a lot. And you can imagine if you are cycling in winter, icy roads, snow everywhere, I mean, it's pretty clear that you will crash at some point. And, well, that's what happened to me. So I had a ton of scratches all over my body. I broke my finger. And what this resulted in is that I couldn't really do athletic stuff for a couple of weeks during the Christmas. So in the end, I ended up going for walks around the hills and just listening to audiobooks. And I listened to the last winter to two audiobooks. One was the Going Infinite by Michael Lewis about the crypto scandals, Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX scandal. I hope I will never have to make a talk about comparing the company I work for to this book. But the other book I was reading was Good to Great by Jim Collins. And is there someone in the audience who read it? Are there some people who read this book? Wow, nice. Nobody? Whoa. So I can really now sound smart. What Jim and his research team did in this book and what they are describing there is they looked at 40 years of financial and company data for public companies, and they identified 11 companies in the world which have been doing quite good, okay, with the industry standard, and then suddenly there was a turning point where they started growing exponentially faster than the rest of their industries. And they sustained this growth for over 15 years at least. And they're looking at these companies, they're analyzing their financial data, they're doing interviews with the people who work there, reading articles, case studies, and they were trying to find patterns which are the same for all of these companies and what they were doing differently than the rest. And it's a really good read. And when I was reading it, I was thinking about it and I realized that, oh my gosh, we're a good company, but we are not on the path to be a great one as they are describing there. So for me, this was pretty clear that let's do everything from the beginning. Let's try to optimize everything from the beginning. Let's look at the company as there was nothing before. Luckily, the company felt the same way, as I mentioned. So we started all over again this year. And there are a couple of concepts from the book which I think are really now looking backwards, could be applied really to the story of us. I picked two which I felt are the most important ones. So one of them is who's on the bus. There is a note, first who, then what. The reason is that always when you are doing a strategic change, start with the people, because strategies can be affected by markets, by competitors, by external factors. But if you have the right people there, they will figure it out. So I would always start from the people perspective of the change. So who's on the bus means that you need to figure out who on the team needs to stay on the bus, who needs to go outside of the bus. And not only that, but also where do people sit in the bus? Who sits in the front? Who sits in the back? Who collaborates with who? Who works on innovative features? Who works on business as usual? So there was a lot to unpack about it. And I think you can now understand where I'm going to. This naturally leads to layoffs. And I think for me, this was by far the toughest part of my career as a designer, as a manager, as a professional, because if I look at the team, at the roughly 50 people on design, I was probably involved in hiring like 95% of those people, and now I need to say to a big portion of those people goodbye. That for me, definitely tough moment. I knew about it beforehand. I was preparing emotionally for weeks, but still this was the hardest part of my careers. And the way how we structured the layoffs was that, well, we started from the product perspective. So we canceled a lot of the stuff I was talking about. So there was all these things and much more. So we started like crossing all the stuff, and the teams who worked on these products had to go. We tried to simplify as much as possible. And eventually, after all this reorganization and changes, we ended up with only having 2 teams in the departments. A shopping experience team focused on the e-commerce part of the buying the tickets, and then a self-service team, which is focused on the supporting then when you already purchased the ticket. Then also, this also meant that we tightened the collaboration a lot between the design teams, because before that they were working on the product teams with product owners and engineers, and now we put them into these 2 teams where the designers were much closer together. So it was one of the big changes. The other change was that we only kept the unique knowledge researchers. So that meant that, as I was explaining, data science, qualitative, market research, we kept one of each to have the knowledge in the team, but it was not a 12-member team anymore. We kept 2 content designers for the whole company. We merged localization with AI. What I mean by this is that localization typically is a very long process, where when you design something and want to release it, it needs to be localized first, which the translators need time for, so it takes like 2 weeks. We now do it in a way that AI does it automatically first. It's instead of 2 weeks, maybe 2 hours of work, but then the translators are still checking it and updating it, but it doesn't block the initial release of the features. So I think we shifted a lot this process, and we completely canceled the design ops and design system team. But what we did, we moved those design system designers, one to each team. So we had 1 design system designer for the shopping experience team and 1 for the self-service. So we optimized a lot. And then the last part was that I started hiring. And now you might be completely confused. So you laid off people, and now you start hiring again. Why the hell would you do that? So for me, there is, and I think this brings me to a random wisdom number 1 from this talk, is that if you are shifting strategy, hire someone new. Because I could see on myself, I could see on the team that when you have years of experience from working in a certain way, you have a huge bias to how things were, how you got there, and now you want to shift to something fresh and new. It's really hard to do with the bias. So I wanted to have someone on the team who comes completely clean with fresh mind, like I've never seen this company before. So this was one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. The other thing was that layoffs by itself, like I could feel it on myself, it was a very emotional thing, which kind of like hits you a lot. And if someone who was not hit by this emotional, mental thing, if someone fresh comes to the team, they can kind of like also get the spirits a little bit up. So I think these were the two main reasons why I also focused on hiring someone new into the team. And there were a lot of struggles with this. Like it might sound like I knew exactly what we were doing, but it was a complete nightmare. Like, so first thing which you will immediately struggle with is when you change the strategy and change what people work on is that they were initially hired for doing something else for a very different type of company. So you will have this natural fight there, and like people will also leave after the layoffs because they are not satisfied with the new normal. So I think this is just something you need to embrace. And the other thing you need to really embrace is that layoffs are always messy, especially when you are doing it across multiple legislations, multiple countries. Then like it's just a huge mess, and you just have to work with this. It will never be smooth. It's not a pleasant thing to do. Take your time afterwards to reflect. For me, like a big mistake was that I wanted to immediately start doing changes. Like after we got through this emotional stress of laying off people, I was like, okay, now I'm ready. I cannot think about it. Let's start doing the changes. But people need time to like process it, to reflect. I think one of the big mistakes for me was that I started pushing people immediately to do suddenly work and a different type of work rather than giving them time to heal. So I think for yourself, but also for the people on your team, like you need to give time to reflect. And the last part was that we strengthened a lot of the teams in the design, and we built the collaboration much closer, but that naturally thinks that someone else feels left out. So then the product managers and engineers who previously worked with the designers a lot now felt that they are not so close to it, so that's also something we needed to look at. So this was the first concept. The second concept, which I think is the most important one from this talk, is find your hedgehog. So what is this story about? So it starts with a short Greek story about a fox and a hedgehog. And it's a story where the hedgehog goes every day to the same path to get his food and then go back to his home. And the fox every day tries to catch this hedgehog. And the fox is very smart. The fox tries different ways how to catch this hedgehog. But what the hedgehog every day does, he just curls into a spiky ball, and the fox cannot touch it. And what the story illustrates is that the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one really big thing. And this is, I think, what's really important for companies to think about and focus on. Like, don't do many things. Focus on the one thing which is really big and be really good at it. And the way how you identify this one thing, I think it's easier through these three kind of questions. Is the number one question is, do something what you are deeply passionate about as a company. The number two is do something that you can be the best in the world at. So meaning that if that's something that some other company already mastered, don't go there because you will probably not be able to do it if there is already someone doing it. And the first thing is kind of very important as well, is that it needs to be something that drives economic engine. It's something that makes economic value. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable to keep up. And so what this meant for us is that, well, what we were really passionate about at the beginning, it was the flights, right? So we stick to that. We killed everything around it. We were like, okay, flights is our thing. The second thing was what we can be the best in the world at. There's a lot of airlines selling flights. We were always really good at the peace of mind travel, that we can get you the best price. You can search exactly through all the data in the world, through the all airline traffic. You can get the best deal. You can get protected when something happens across the layovers. So we focus, okay, peace of mind, that's our thing. Let's focus on that area. And the third thing was, the economical engine is pretty easy for us. It's the revenue from these bookings, right? Like we want to increase the revenue of these bookings, which are peace of mind bookings. And so going back to the initial problems I was talking about, users search but don't book, they don't understand the upsells, the refund policy is messy, missing up-to-date information. We started working as design team on that, and the initial thing was that we presented these problems to the senior management and worked directly with the board of the company, with the CEO, on coming up with ideas how this could be solved. And the way we did it is that then we came back with the ideas, and we started in those teams with designers collaborating and jamming on ideas how this whole flow can be changed. And it worked like 2 days of designing, and then 2 days of interviewing users, how they feel, what they think about it, and again 2 days of designing and 2 days of interviews, and we eventually got from a conceptual state to iterating on a higher and higher fidelity to the details of the usability. So it was 2 days of designing, 2 days of testing. Another thing which we did was we had research calibrations after each of these. So the research calibration was driven by the researcher after the 2 days of testing, where everyone on the team wrote down how they felt about the research, what they learned there, what works, what doesn't, and we voted on the ideas like which we want to improve. And then we also, not only that we got feedback from users, we also got a ton of feedback from stakeholders. So we did demos the same way as Apple does it a lot. They demo to the senior stakeholders. We did the same. We did a lot of them as presentations, but we also did a lot of them only in Figma in a way that this is kudos to one of our senior designers. He came up with this template where you have the screen in the flow, and then you explain all the insights which were gathered in the research. You show the data, and the senior stakeholders can just read through this and give their opinions on how they feel. Is this a go or no go? And it significantly changed the Figma files as well, right? Like this was the initial one, and now we have basically a whole flow in a Figma file instead of like small tasks and small parts of it. So we really shifted also that type of work and the processes we did. And afterwards, after we were all agreed and we had the stakeholder approval that this is the way to go, we started slicing the implementation. And you can imagine that previously we worked on these A/B test experiments, these small parts, and now we're changing like basically half of the company with one vision flow from design. So it requires like 10 to 15 teams to actually implement it. So the way we did it, we worked with the teams on slicing who should do what, but then you have all these priorities, right? Like how do you manage all these priorities across these companies, across the company? So the way we did it is we created one roadmap for the entire company. We killed all the roadmaps of the separate teams, and for hundreds of people, we created, this is your roadmap, everyone work on this. And we got approval from senior management, and they actually own the roadmap, where the whole company sees what is the priority number 1, number 2, and everyone in the company works on priority 1 unless they cannot do anything for it, so then they work on priority 2. And this is how we got more and more alignment and focus on the important stuff across the company. And also, we shifted from quarterly planning to half-a-year planning. So we now do only H1, H2, where we have a clear roadmap and everyone works for half a year only on these things. So this was really instrumental to get this stuff done. And now the epilogue, like, so what did we actually do with all of this? We released a new service called KiwiCom Guarantee, which basically targets the anxiety of travel. And the way we built the product, we completely redesigned it, and now our search, when you search, you always get, or majority of the times, you get 2 results. One of them is the Kiwi result, but we also know that some people want to just go to the airline to book it. So we give them a redirect. You can directly go to the airline and book it there, simple. But what we did with the Kiwi option, we tell you it's more expensive by a couple of euros, but this is what you get back. The protected layover, the automatic check-in, all this stuff. So we brought the value immediately at the beginning. And what this helped us to do is that now we are completely transparent about the pricing, so we make it more expensive than the airline price. But then what it means is that people consciously can choose this because they want the extra services, but we don't have to upsell anything in the booking. We don't have to make the margin back in the booking because they are already paying more here. So that simplified completely the protection services, and now the flow is super simple. And this was a huge risk. So we started testing it on smaller markets. These were the first markets we tested on, Poland being one of them. So in Poland, if you go to kiwi.com, you should probably see this. And surprisingly, it's starting to work. Like people are buying the tickets, even though they are more expensive, and they're enjoying the simplicity of understanding what do I get, when do I get it, when do I get credits, when do I get money for refund, and so on. So really looks promising, but I think also it's really too soon to tell. It's the huge shift, and it's been 7 months of work, so I think it's very too early to say whether this will work or not. But even though it's too soon, I'm super proud of the team because it's been a huge transition, and I think everyone who was going through this, it was emotional, it was nerve-wracking, but I think deserves a huge kudos because surviving this, it's been an undertaking. And then I will just leave with a couple of learnings from this talk that, well, you can transform no matter the size. We've been a huge global company and we went for it, and it kind of maybe will work, maybe not, let's see. Figure out who should be on the bus and who not, and where should people sit. I think that's the initial thing when you are going for a transition. Find your hedgehog, find a thing which you are passionate about, which you can be the best at, and which makes economic sense. And work on it iteratively. This is not like a one-time thing. Like you will learn new things. And the last thing, I mean, don't ride your bicycle in the winter. Because otherwise you will injure yourself. You will end up reading books like Good to Great, and then giving 35 minutes of talk in front of an audience at a conference, and nobody has time for that, right? Thank you.
Thanks, MJ. We have couple of minutes for question and answers. So, do you guys have any questions? Okay, the last row.
Thank you, Martin. This is a marvelous presentation. I'm really a fan of simplifying things. One question may be a bit personal. What's your one big thing as a manager now?
What's one
You
big...
said that everyone should find the one big thing, and you presented the one big thing of Kiwi.
Got it.
What's your one big thing as a manager?
Wow, super tough and personal question. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind without too much thinking is the people on the team. Like for me, the reason why I became a manager is because I get energy from people. This is also something I've been questioning throughout the process, because especially in the times of layoffs, you are not the most popular manager when you have to do this. And for me, this was the time when I had a real crisis that if the people don't have the energy to do stuff, I don't have an energy to push them. And it's this kind of chicken-egg problem where I get energy from people and then I give it back with my vision. But if I don't get this energy, I cannot give it back, and it becomes this infinite loop. So I think the people who are willing to do stuff and work on cool stuff, I think that's the one thing. Like I love working with great teams. So I guess that's the answer.
Okay, we have one more question from the app. As the change was huge, I'm wondering how did you encourage businesses that you knew solution is the right one to proceed with? Thinking about big KPIs like ROI, return of investment.
Yeah, so I think in our case, the important part was that this wasn't a design-only change. Like we were part of it, and we really tried to make sure that we are relevant. But this was something that came directly from the CEO as well. Like he wanted the change as well. And so if your top management wants to change something, it's pretty easy to push to the company. So I think we were extremely lucky that the board and the company wanted to go through this risk. And in design, I think maybe it was not clear from the presentation, what we tried to do throughout the entire time is to support it and to stay relevant. To not say like, oh, now stakeholders are going to change something, so we will just wait and see what they come up with. But rather, what are the ways we can support them? So I think in the ROIs and the big metrics as KPIs, I think if it comes from the top, they will take the risk on themselves, the senior management of the company. And with saying this, this doesn't mean that we went completely wild to the change. As I illustrated, we started market by market, just testing stuff if it works. So majority of the business is still intact. It works as it used to. There are just like some markets where we are piloting whether this will work or not. And you could see that those countries, from a flight perspective, are not really big countries. Now we are scaling to the first big country, which is Spain, which is kind of a lot of travel. But otherwise, those countries, comparing to US, to UK, like Poland and Slovakia, like they don't have that much air travel as these huge markets. So it's a very careful step-by-step process. So the main KPIs of the company are still in touch, and we are going iteratively.